What's up, Star Wars nerds, and welcome to another episode of Brett on Fett. On today's episode, we'll take a look at the new Speeder Bike, Scout Trooper, and Grogu set from The Mandalorian. Plus, I've got some pickups to share. Let's get to it.
Refusing my request. That was unpleasant. I'm sorry you had to see that.
Welcome back to the channel. This is episode 73 of Brett on Fett. And about 6 months ago, we started receiving the Speeder Bike and Scout Trooper set from Return of the Jedi for the Vintage Collection. And I did a review on that set back then, and it's actually one of my most viewed videos from my channel, so thank you so much if you're one of those who checked that one out. And so now I wanted to revisit the Speeder Bike, but this time it's the Mandalorian version that just came out. It's the Speeder Bike, Scout Trooper, and Grogu set for the Vintage Collection. And it's mostly a repaint of the vehicle and figure, with the exception of the Grogu it comes with. So I'm mainly going to focus on how it looks and some comparisons to the previous set. But before we get to that review, I just want to quickly share a few pickups, so let's check them out. Alright, so first off, this is not a new pickup. You may have seen this before. This is my Ian McDermott signed Emperor figure. I got this signed at ICCC. It came back from the grader as a 90, which I was very happy with. I got this maybe a month or two back from CAS, but the other figure I got signed at ICCC was this sabinewren figure from the Blackseries, signed by Tia Sircar, and it just came back from the grader, and I really loved how the purple ink turned out for the autograph. And it did come back as an 85. I was a little bit disappointed, but not too bad. I thought maybe I'd get a 90, but I was happy with the 85. And it was just an awesome experience meeting Tia Sircar. She was extremely nice. And so like the Emperor, I really wanted to have this thing authenticated and preserved. When you submit an autographed item to CAS, not only do they grade it, but they do authenticate the autograph as well. And so it's just nice having that documentation. Next up, this is not Star Wars at all, but I saw this at Target today and I had to have it. This is a threat level midnight figure.
Clean up on aisle 5.
From the show The Office, the American version of The Office with Michael Scott. And unfortunately, the figure does not look like Steve Carell at all in the face, but it is very cool. And here on the back, you've got the rest of the wave, all of the characters from that terrible, terrible movie that Michael Scott made on the show.
Sorry about your friend, Skarn.
The joke's on you, Golden Face. That man was a wanted animal rapist.
And look, it even has instructions on how to do the Skarn, which is just a terrible dance that the main character does in the middle of the movie.
You jump to the right and you shake a hand, and you jump to the left and you shake that hand. You meet new friends, you tie some yarn, and that's how you do the Skarn.
But anyways, this was just so ridiculous that this figure even exists that I had to have it. I love The Office. Yes, the British version is better, but the American version is very good too. One of my favorites, and so just had to pick this up. All right, so back to Star Wars, and next up, I picked up niennunb from Return of the Jedi. I was shocked. I actually found this at my local Walmart. I have not seen new TVC there in ages. And I had him pre-ordered from Big Bad Toy Store, but for some reason he's been delayed. So I went ahead and grabbed this one and canceled my order from Big Bad. And of course, this figure is a reissue of VC 106. And believe it or not, I never actually had niennunb, and I was gonna get him, but then I heard that he might be reissued, and so I decided to wait. And so finally he's come out, and I have now completed all of the current Vintage Collection figures for the original trilogy movies. Now, you may know from previous videos that I'm a huge fan of doctoraphra and her murder droids, TVC and BT1. I did a pretty recent video on a jumbo vintage style TVC figure, Well, recently, Brandon Alamo from 5 Idiots Talking Toys advertised that he was customizing vintage 3PO characters to look like triplezero, and I had to jump on it. This thing turned out awesome, and Brandon even threw in a couple of weapons that he customized with magnets, so you can attach it to his back there with the rifle, and then on his side, this is my favorite part, is a little sidearm magnet. That thing is awesome. So a lot of fun, and it just looks fantastic. I absolutely love triplezero with that dark kind of gunmetal gray / black color and those glowing red eyes that are just piercing. He's just such a cool droid, and I just love having this vintage Kenner style. Brandon did an excellent job, and now I can put him next to my other custom vintage 3PO that Shane from 5 Idiots Talking Toys made a while back. And so both are excellent customs, but definitely happy to have that triplezero. All right, so now let's take a look at the new speeder bike set from The Mandalorian, and we'll take a look at the box. You can see it shows the Scout Trooper and Grogu figure it's included, and you got various pictures, just like you had with the Return of the Jedi version. There's a nice little picture of Grogu. There's a picture of the Scout chilling out by his bike. Same picture on the back that's on the front, and there's a picture of what's included inside. The cardboard used for the box is extremely sturdy, and overall Hasbro has just been doing an excellent job with the boxes for all of their vehicles for the Vintage Collection. Alright, next up, let's take a look at the included carded figure. This, of course, is the Remnant Scout Trooper. And on the card, it says Scout Trooper and Grogu. And my only issue with the card back image is there's no Grogu. It's got Grogu in the name pill, but Grogu is not featured in the image. So that's a tad disappointing, but I get that he's in a satchel most of the time when they're on screen. So that was probably very tricky trying to find the right photo. But he is VC289, and there's a look at the other recent wave of figures on the back. Overall, pretty good looking card back, and I love the fact that it came unpunched. That's always a plus. Next, let's take a quick look at the figure. I've got him here out of the package holding his gun, and he's got the Grogu satchel around his shoulder, and you can see he is very dirty, a lot of weathering. They kind of went to town with the weathering, but I'm all right with that. I think it looks pretty good. Definitely want him to stand out from the regular clean Scout Trooper from Return of the Jedi, and looks like he's got his knee pads on the consistent way as shown in the show. And before we compare him to the Return of the Jedi version, let's quickly take a closer look at this Grogu. Alright, so here's the satchel with Grogu, and it is all one molded piece. That is not a separate figure hiding in there, but I think they did an excellent job. They even added a few paint apps there with some white and silver and red, and it's just a great mold. My only issue with this is with the main strap. I wish it had the ability to snap off and on, and I wish they included an alternative smaller strap as well, and in a minute I'll demonstrate why I feel that way. Alright, so here's a look at the new Remnant Scout Trooper on the left compared to our Return of the Jedi clean Scout Trooper on the right. You can see just way more weathering. It stands out, which is good. You want to see that. You want to see a difference. And let's look at the legs, and you can see the knee pads are reversed. Each figure is wearing the knee pads consistent with their respective live action versions, so that's great. You want to see that. And I just really like this Remnant Scout Trooper paint apps. They did a great job. I like having both figures, and I like that there is a clear, noticeable difference in the paint apps. All right, so let's take a look at the speeder bike, and right off the bat, obviously a totally different paint color. This is a light gray used compared to the Return of the Jedi version where they went with that darker brown. It's got, of course, the same flaps, all the different functions. I'm not going to go into as much detail on this one as I did on my previous review, since it is the same vehicle, just with new paint apps. But I do like the very subtle weathering they used here. It's not major, it's very light, I think, compared to the Jedi version. It's got a satchel that's removable as well, but it is a different satchel than we'll see on the Jedi version. I think this satchel is actually nicer. And of course, it comes with that same flight stand used from the previous version. I love this flight stand. It gives you 3 different height options. I'm going to stick it on the medium height here. And it's just great because you can tilt them and everything. And overall, I really like this light gray color. I just prefer it over the dark brown. It just feels more like Star Wars to me for whatever reason. And I like the very subtle weathering. And so here's the Scout Trooper riding on the bike with Grogu on the side, and he just looks awesome on here. Now, of course, I have the same issue with this one I had on the Return of the Jedi version, is I can't get the Scout Trooper to get his butt down on the seat. I just found it very difficult to bend his legs up and stay that way high enough. And I think the real problem is the pedals were molded at an angle that is just too shallow. Alright, so I've brought in my Return of the Jedi speeder bikes. I've got Luke on one of them and the Scout Trooper in the other, just so you can see them side by side. Pretty big difference in the paint apps. Obviously, the Jedi version added a lot more paint apps for damage, and then of course it used that solid brown color. Again, I prefer the light gray, and I don't mind that the new version didn't show as much damage. I like that there's a big difference between the two. It may be hard to see, but there is subtle weathering on the gray one, and I think it would have been cheesy if they matched the exact same type and magnitude of damage on the two different vehicles, so I'm fine with the way it looks. And there's a look at the two different satchels that attach to the respective speeder bikes. I do think the Mandalorian version is a nicer looking satchel, but I think both are fairly accurate to their respective live action versions. So I think it's going to be very subjective on which speeder bike you like better. I happen to prefer the gray color speeder bike myself, but I'm definitely happy to have both versions, and I really like the fact that they look very different from one another. Alright, so now let's get to the number one reason I wanted this Mandalorian version of the speeder bike. That's right, it's IG-11, one of my favorite TVC figures, and when they announced they were coming out with this version of the speeder bike, that's one of the first things I thought of, was how was he going to look riding on this thing, and he looks pretty awesome. I'm first putting him on here without trying to involve Grogu, just to make sure he can fit on there, and he has excellent articulation, but again, you just can't get his butt down because of those pedals just don't sit at the right angle, in my opinion. If they had just lowered them a bit, then I think you could get him to stay, but that's just molded. They're not adjustable or anything. But his feet do fit on the pedals pretty decently, and because he's just so well articulated, you're going to be able to get him in a number of poses on this bike. But now let's try to get the Grogu satchel on him while he's on the bike. So if you're trying to reenact the scene where he's riding on the speeder bike with Grogu in front of him, I think this might be the best way to make that happen, is by putting the strap around his body. And you can do that easily by removing one of his arms and just slipping it over. You know, IG-11's arms can easily snap in and out. And I'm going to show you what it looks like if you don't do it this way, by putting it around his neck. And as you can see, the strap is just too long and it just looks weird like that. And that's what I was talking about earlier when I was wishing the strap could actually snap on and off and give us an alternative strap that can maybe go around the chest or waist of IG-11 to really reenact that scene. And so I just don't think it looks good that way. And so another option, and maybe the best option, is just to go ahead and put the satchel around his shoulder like the set intended to wear it on the Scout Trooper. And it's just not going to be screen accurate the way IG-11 carried him, but it still looks really good. And so we can put him in a number of positions carrying Grogu that way with no problem. And here I've posed him with one hand holding on to the handlebar and the other holding on to his blaster rifle. And this might be one of my favorite ways to pose him so far. I really like the way this all works, and with the satchel in that position, it kind of hides the fact that his butt cannot touch the seat. And so here I've got the two speeder bikes together, the Scout Trooper and IG-11 in sort of a chase scenario. Now this is not very screen accurate, of course, but it still looks pretty cool. This will probably be the way I'll end up displaying my speeder bikes. Alright, so let's get them on this spinny and then get them in some fun poses to close out this review. Overall, this is a good looking set, but it's made way more fun with an IG-11 on hand. Alright, so that's going to do it for this episode of Brett on Fett. Thanks for checking out this video. Don't forget you can also follow me on Instagram and on Twitter/X. Take care, and we'll see you next time.